Have you ever walked away from a conversation feeling confused, guilty, or questioning your own reality, even though you know deep down that you were right? Have you noticed someone in your life who always seems to get their way, yet you can never quite put your finger on how they do it? Maybe it's a coworker who somehow makes you feel responsible for their mistakes, or a friend who showers you with compliments one moment and makes you feel worthless the next. If any of this sounds familiar, then you need to stay tuned, because what you're about to discover in this video might completely change how you see the people around you. Before we dive deep into this eye-opening topic, I want to ask you something important. If you've ever felt like someone was playing mind games with you, or if you've struggled to understand why certain relationships leave you feeling emotionally drained, this video is going to be a game changer for you. So do me a favor right now and hit that like button, because this information could protect you and the people you love from serious emotional harm. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications, because we're going to explore the hidden world of psychological manipulation. And trust me, you won't want to miss a single insight. Also, drop a comment below and tell me if you've ever dealt with a manipulative person. Your story might help someone else realize they're not alone today. We're going to uncover the secrets of people who manipulate everyone around them. These aren't the obvious villains you see in movies. These are the people who smile at you, who seem caring and concerned, who might even be your friends, family members, or romantic partners. But beneath that friendly surface, there's a carefully calculated strategy to control your thoughts, emotions, and actions for their own benefit. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly how to spot these tactics, understand why people become manipulators in the first place, and most importantly, learn how to protect yourself and reclaim your power. So let's get started. Let's start with something that might surprise you. Manipulation isn't always a conscious, evil plan that someone hatches in a dark room while twirling their metaphorical mustache. In fact, psychological research shows us that many manipulators don't even fully realize what they're doing. They've learned these behaviors as survival mechanisms, often from childhood experiences or competitive environments where they felt powerless or threatened. Understanding this doesn't excuse their behavior, but it helps us recognize the warning signs before we become their next target. So what exactly is psychological manipulation? At its core, manipulation is the use of indirect, deceptive, or underhanded tactics to control another person for selfish gain. Unlike healthy social influence, where both people benefit equally from an exchange, manipulation is one person exploits the other's emotions, insecurities, and trust to get what they want, leaving the victim feeling confused, diminished, or even responsible for the manipulator's problems. Think about it this way. When you have an honest conversation with a friend and you both compromise to reach a solution, that's healthy influence. But when someone makes you feel guilty for having boundaries, twists your words to make you look bad, or showers you with affection only to suddenly withdraw it as punishment, that's manipulation. Now here's where it gets really interesting. According to research published in Psychology Today, there are 3 main reasons why people develop manipulative tendencies. And understanding these can help you spot manipulators before they cause damage in your life. The first reason is family history and upbringing. Many manipulators grew up in environments where they had to compete intensely for attention, love, resources, or approval. Maybe they had siblings who got more attention, or parents who only showed affection when certain conditions were met. In these families, children learn that direct communication doesn't work, but manipulation does. They discover that guilt tripping gets them what crying couldn't achieve, or that playing the victim gets them sympathy when asking directly would get them rejected. Over time, these tactics become deeply ingrained patterns that they carry into their adult relationships without even questioning whether there's a healthier way to get their needs met. The second major cause of manipulative behavior is experiencing social weakness or disadvantage during formative years. People who felt excluded, inferior, or powerless often develop manipulation as a compensatory strategy. If someone grew up feeling economically disadvantaged compared to their peers, socially awkward, or culturally different, they might have discovered that they couldn't compete on equal footing in obvious ways. So instead, they learned to use psychological tactics to level the playing field. They might have discovered that flattery could get them into social circles that would otherwise reject them, or that playing helpless could get others to do things for them that they felt incapable of achieving on their own. This doesn't make their adult manipulation acceptable, but it helps explain why some people rely so heavily on these underhanded tactics instead of developing genuine confidence and skills. The third pathway to becoming a manipulator involves environmental conditioning from professional, social, or cultural norms that actually reward cunning and strategic deception. Certain professions, like high-pressure sales, competitive politics, or cutthroat corporate environments, can actually normalize and even celebrate manipulative tactics. When someone spends years in an environment where the person who manipulates best gets promoted, makes the most money, or gains the most power, those behaviors can become second nature. They start to see every interaction as a chess game where the goal is to outmaneuver the other person rather than to build genuine connection. Some cultures or subcultures also emphasize aggressive bargaining, strategic deception in business dealings, or the idea that showing vulnerability is weakness. When these values are internalized, manipulation stops feeling wrong and starts feeling like smart strategy. Have you ever wondered why that person in your life can't just be direct and honest? Now you're starting to see the deeper psychological patterns at play. But recognizing why someone manipulates is just the beginning. Up next, we're going to reveal the specific tactics that manipulators use. And I promise you'll start recognizing these patterns in situations you've already experienced. But before we continue, if you're finding this valuable, show some love by hitting that like button and leaving a comment about which type of manipulator you've encountered most often. Your engagement helps this video reach more people who need this information. Now that you understand why people become manipulators, let's dive into the actual tactics they use, and I'm warning you right now. This section might feel uncomfortable because you're going to recognize these patterns in your own experiences. That discomfort is actually a good sign because it means you're becoming aware, and awareness is the first step to protection. So let's talk about the most common and devastatingly effective manipulation techniques that are probably being used on someone you know right now. Or maybe even on you. Let's start with one of the most dangerous tactics called gaslighting. And it's so subtle that victims often don't realize it's happening until significant psychological damage has occurred. Gaslighting is when someone manipulates you into questioning your own memory, perception, or sanity. Picture this scenario. You clearly remember your partner promising to pick you up from work at 5 o'clock. But when 5:30 rolls around and you're still waiting, they finally show up and insist they never said 5 o'clock. When you protest, they say things like, "You're always misremembering things," or "You're being overly sensitive again," or "I'm worried about your memory lately." Over time, this constant denial of your reality makes you doubt your own mind. You start thinking maybe you really are too sensitive. Maybe you really do remember things wrong. And that's exactly what the gaslighter wants, because once you stop trusting yourself, you become completely dependent on their version of reality. Another incredibly common tactic is guilt, and this one is particularly effective because it hijacks your natural empathy and compassion. A guilt tripper makes you feel responsible for their emotions, their problems, or their happiness. They might say things like, "After everything I've done for you, this is how you treat me." Or, "If you really cared about me, you would do this." Or, "I guess I'm just not important enough to you." Notice how these statements put all the responsibility on you, while completely avoiding any acknowledgement of their own behavior or unreasonable expectations. The guilt tripper is essentially weaponizing your kindness and turning it against you. They know that good-hearted people don't want to hurt others, so they exploit that trait by making you feel like setting a boundary or saying no is equivalent to being cruel or ungrateful. Then there's a tactic called love bombing, and this one is particularly insidious because it feels amazing at first. Love bombing is when someone overwhelms you with excessive attention, affection, compliments, and gifts right at the beginning of a relationship. They text you constantly. They tell you you're their soulmate after just a few dates. They shower you with elaborate presents, and they want to spend every possible moment together. It feels like you've finally met someone who truly appreciates you and sees your value. But here's the trap. This intense affection isn't genuine connection. It's a calculated strategy to create dependency and isolation. Once you're emotionally invested and have distanced yourself from your support system because you're spending all your time with this person, the love bomber's behavior dramatically shifts. The attention stops, the affection becomes conditional, and suddenly you find yourself desperate to get back to that initial honeymoon phase. You'll do anything to feel that special again, which gives the manipulator complete power over you. Let's talk about another sophisticated tactic called DARVO, which stands for deny, attack, and reverse, victim and offender. This three-step strategy is devastating because it completely flips reality on its head. Here's how it works. Let's say you confront someone about something hurtful they did. First, they deny it completely. They'll say it never happened, you're making it up, or you're exaggerating. When you persist with evidence or clarity, they move to the attack phase. They start criticizing you, bringing up your past mistakes, questioning your motives, or attacking your character. They might say you're crazy, too sensitive, or trying to start drama. Finally, and this is the most psychologically damaging part, they reverse the roles entirely. Suddenly, they're the victim and you're the abuser. They might say things like, "I can't believe you're attacking me like this when I've been nothing but good to you," or "You're always trying to make me look bad," or even your accusations are emotionally abusive. By the end of this interaction, you're the one apologizing for bringing up your legitimate concern, and they've escaped all accountability. Are you starting to see how these tactics work together to create confusion and control? There's one more major category we need to discuss, and that's triangulation. This is when a manipulator brings a third party into your conflict or relationship to strengthen their position and isolate you further. For example, they might tell you, "Everyone agrees with me that you're being unreasonable," or "I talk to your mother and even she thinks you're wrong about this." They might also play people against each other by telling different stories to different people, creating drama and competition while they remain at the center of attention. Triangulation is particularly effective because it makes you feel outnumbered and alone. even if the manipulator is lying about what others said, or carefully selecting people they know will take their side. Now, I need you to pause for just a second and really think about what we've covered. Have any of these tactics been used on you? Have you maybe even used some of them yourself without realizing it? Drop a comment below and let me know which tactic shocked you the most. And make sure you've hit that subscribe button, because in our final section, we're going to arm you with powerful strategies to protect yourself from these manipulative tactics. You're about to learn how to spot manipulation in real time and shut it down before it causes you harm. All right. We've covered the uncomfortable truth about who manipulators are and the sophisticated tactics they use. But now comes the most empowering part of this entire video. You're about to learn exactly how to protect yourself from manipulation and reclaim your power in any relationship. These aren't just theoretical concepts. These are practical, proven strategies that you can start using immediately. And I promise you, they will change your life if you commit to implementing them. The absolute foundation of protecting yourself from manipulation is learning to recognize the tactics in real time. And this is where your newfound knowledge becomes your superpower. Research published in the Journal of Aggression, Maltreatment and Trauma found something fascinating. People who understand manipulation tactics, like DARVO, are significantly better at spotting when they're being manipulated, and they're much less likely to believe the manipulator's version of events or blame themselves for the conflict. This means that simply by watching this video and becoming aware of these patterns, you've already upgraded your defensive capabilities. But awareness alone isn't enough. You need to combine it with specific strategies that shut down manipulation attempts before they gain traction in your mind and heart. The first critical strategy is to establish and maintain firm boundaries. And I mean genuinely firm boundaries that you refuse to compromise on, even when the manipulator turns up the pressure. Manipulators specifically target people with weak boundaries because they know these individuals can be pushed, guilted, or confused into giving in. Your boundaries might sound like this: I'm not going to continue this conversation. If you raise your voice at me, or I need time to think about this decision, and I'm not going to be rushed, or I don't accept responsibility for your emotional reactions to my reasonable boundaries. When you state a boundary, expect the manipulator to test it immediately. They'll push back, they'll guilt trip, they'll tell you you're being mean or unreasonable, but this is exactly when you must hold firm. If you give in after setting a boundary, you've actually trained them that your boundaries don't mean anything and that if they push hard enough, you'll cave. Another powerful protective strategy is to stay calm and refuse to get emotionally reactive. Even when the manipulator is clearly trying to provoke you. Manipulators thrive on emotional chaos because when you're upset, angry, or crying, you're not thinking clearly and you're much easier to control. They'll say outrageous things specifically designed to get a reaction from you. And then they'll use your emotional response as evidence that you're unstable or unreasonable. Instead, practice what researchers call emotional regulation. When you feel that surge of anger or hurt, take a deep breath, pause before responding, and remind yourself that staying calm is your greatest weapon. You might say something like, I can see you're trying to upset me, but I'm going to stay focused on the actual issue we need to resolve. This completely disarms their tactic and forces the conversation back to substance rather than emotion. Here's another game-changing strategy. Demand evidence and clarity instead of accepting vague accusations or when a manipulator says, "You always do this," or "Everyone thinks you're wrong," respond with specific questions. Ask them, "Can you give me a specific example of when I did that?" Or, exactly who told you they think I'm wrong? Manipulators rely on vague, sweeping statements because they create an impression of truth without requiring actual evidence. When you force them to be specific, their manipulation often falls apart because they can't provide concrete examples. They might get angry at you for questioning them, but that anger is actually confirmation that you've hit on their deceptive tactic. It's also absolutely essential that you trust your own perceptions and gut feelings, even when someone is actively trying to make you doubt yourself. If something feels wrong, it probably is wrong. If you remember a conversation clearly, but someone insists it never happened, trust your memory. If someone's words say one thing, but their actions consistently show another, trust what you see rather than what you hear. Manipulators count on you overriding your own instincts to be polite, to give them the benefit of the doubt, or to avoid conflict. But your instincts exist for a reason. They're picking up on subtle cues that your conscious mind might not fully process yet. Start keeping a journal or notes about interactions that feel off. When you document what actually happened in real life, you create a record that can't be gaslit away later when the manipulator tries to rewrite history finally. And this might be the most important strategy of all. Build and maintain strong connections with trustworthy friends and family members who can provide outside perspective. Manipulation thrives in isolation, which is why manipulators often try to separate you from your support system. They'll criticize your friends, create conflict between you and your family, or monopolize your time so you don't have opportunities to connect with others. Resist this at all costs. Make it a non-negotiable priority to maintain relationships with people who genuinely care about your well-being. When you're unsure if you're being manipulated, talk to these trusted individuals and get their perspective. They can often see things clearly that you can't see when you're emotionally entangled in the situation. Just make sure you're confiding in people who have proven themselves trustworthy and who don't have their own manipulative tendencies.